Greetings and salutations, and thank you for hanging out with me. We are going to wander through Ubuntu GNOME 16.04 LTS in this video. We have looked at this before, hence the name Ubuntu GNOME Revisited. As a matter of fact, the most recent version of this distribution that I talked about on this channel was Ubuntu GNOME 16.10, which I was rather impressed with at the time. I installed Ubuntu GNOME 16.04 on my computer in a dual boot with Linux Mint 18.1. Now, the reason why I did that was because I didn't want to have to reinstall Mint should I not like GNOME and want to go to something else. And that is kind of my history with this. I actually kind of like the GNOME 3 desktop experience, and I really dig it for a while, and then something about it starts really annoying me and I have to move on to something else. So I gave myself an out this time around, but this is a fully functional setup and everything's installed and it is rocking and rolling. We're not looking at a virtual machine or anything like that. I am going to call this GNOME throughout this video. I do realize that for some folks, calling it GNOME is more politically correct these days. I have called this desktop GNOME for many years, and I cannot wrap my mind around calling it GNOME. So that's what I'm going to call it, is GNOME. You can call it Farquad P. Schmidlap if you want to. I don't care. Ubuntu GNOME is going away. It's going to be absorbed into Ubuntu proper. That distribution as an official but separate flavor of Ubuntu is going to be no more, because as of Ubuntu 17.10, the GNOME desktop environment will be the standard offering. And so I figured I'd like to have it running. A lot of people talking about GNOME these days in Ubuntu, so let's just really dive into it and take a look around. Before we get into playing around with the desktop, let me first of all thank somebody who helped me out big time. When I was setting this up today, I ran into an issue which I have come across before, and that is if you install VirtualBox, that it doesn't render properly on the desktop. It just doesn't look right. And I have never quite figured out how to fix that. So I posted this video to see if anybody had some answers, and I did get an answer here from this fella, and I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your name, and I'm not even going to try, but thank you very much. Your suggestion worked. And the first really cool feature I can show you about the GNOME desktop is where I'm going to pull up my notes for this particular thing. All you do is hit the super key or the Windows key or the meta key or whatever you want to call that, and then this takes you to the activities menu, and over here you've got your lovely program little favorites bar there, little dock on the side, and then you have what's running shown in expo mode here, and then here are all of your different desktops. So we got a bunch of stuff running here, and if you want to find a file or a program on the computer, just start typing and it shows up. So if I put in VBox, look at that, those are my notes right there, and they open up in gedit, and now we can talk a little bit about how to fix this. So if you want to run VirtualBox, if you're going to run Qt applications on GNOME and they don't look right, you can add this little bit of code here to a file called environment, which is in the /etc or etc directory. That can be a little tricky to actually edit, because the system really doesn't want you to edit that thing while it's up and running and using it. So what you have to do is, instead of just doing sudo and then editing the file, you have to put yourself in a root environment by putting in sudo space -s, and then you are acting as the root user, and then you can finagle it and get it to edit it. So there it is right there. It's a little piece of code, and I will attempt to stick this in the description for the video, and then you can figure that out for yourself if this is a problem that you run across. It's just adding this line to this little file. That's all it does, and that fixes the problem. Now, what is Qt and what is GTK? Well, here we come down to the big difference between GNOME and KDE. KDE is built on a technology called Qt, or Qt, and it is it's a toolkit that developers use to create applications. And when you are creating an application that's going to run on a desktop in a graphic user environment, it gives you the buttons, it gives you all of the sliders and the faders and all that stuff that you need to make that work. In GNOME, we use GTK. In KDE, it's based on Qt. GNOME will happily run a Qt application, and KDE will happily run a GTK application. As a matter of fact, most people who use Linux have a mixture of those installed on their machines. However, GNOME historically does not do that great of a job actually rendering Qt applications. Whereas the latest versions of KDE, the Plasma desktop, they do an excellent job at rendering GTK applications. So a little bit of work needs to be done there, but that's cool. It's all right, no big deal. I was able to fix the problem. And for most applications, you probably wouldn't notice a difference or whatever. I was being picky. It just didn't look right to me. For now, where are you going to get Ubuntu GNOME? Well, you're going to get it from this particular web page here, which is for this official flavor of Ubuntu. You can find out more, you can read the release notes, and you can download a copy for yourself. I assume this is going to be going away here in the next 6 months or so when it gets absorbed, but for now this is where you get it. I will put the link in the description to the video. Now, all of that out of the way, we can start looking at the desktop and how it works. When GNOME 3 came along, it was such a radical departure from GNOME 2 that this is what started a lot of stuff going on in the Linux community. I think Ubuntu had been working on the Unity idea for a while, and when this came along, they said, okay, time to jump into this and make it full steam ahead, because they were not going to be shipping GNOME 3. This was way back in like 2010. And Linux Mint did the same thing. They started developing their Cinnamon desktop. Now, Unity and Cinnamon are all based on GNOME 3. They just don't look exactly like the GNOME 3 environment because it is radically different. So what you got this panel across the top here, and over here you have activities, and you can just take your mouse and you just bang it in there, and then you see we got a nice little dock that pops up. And I already showed you could search for stuff. Well, if we come down here and we click on applications, we get the applications on the computer. This is most recent. Here's all, and then you can just scroll through using your mouse and you can find an application. Nice big huge icons. Here are the ones that I have used thus far after setting this up. And then of course you can pin things here, like if we wanted to put the settings over here, we could pin that, put add to favorites or show details. Now that's kind of a new thing, because one of the things that the GNOME developers have come up with is a piece of software just simply called software, which has been adopted by Ubuntu. Actually, that happened a while ago as the main software installation application. So we'll take a look at that here in a little while after we've done the tour of the desktop. So to get out of this particular environment, you can just take your mouse and slam it up there again, or click the utilities, and you can toggle back and forth. Now once you're here, you can also do all kinds of other things. You'll see that the applications that I currently have running, they go into an expo mode. So if I go to the top desktop here, you'll see that I have Simple Screen Recorder, which is what I'm using to record this video, and there's my web browser. And then I can just simply drag this to whatever desktop I like, and I can organize this as any way I like. These desktops are dynamic, so if I should happen to decide that I don't want Simple Screen Recorder over there, we'll just put it on desktop 2. You see how that one just disappears. Now if I want to do everything on its own individual desktop, then there you go. See, now we've moved this around, and I can click here and it will reorganize itself. So you don't have a set number of desktops, but you can have as many running as you like. So that is the activities menu. Here we have the notification area. This has changed. They moved those up here, thank goodness. They used to be at the bottom and I didn't like them down there, but they're up here now. Here's our calendar, and this is linked to Evolution, which is the application that GNOME uses by default for email, and it uses the calendar. I went ahead and left it that way. I installed Thunderbird. I don't use Evolution. I use Thunderbird for my mail client, but I didn't remove it from the system, just in case I wanted to play with it. And then this is an extension that I added here myself, which tells me what's going on in my hometown. And as far as weather is concerned, that's an extension. We'll look at those in just a couple of moments. Over here, what looks like a bunch of different icons is actually a group of icons, and you click on this and you get this little window. So here's your output volume. Here's the microphone volume right here. And then here is where you interact with your networks, your Wi-Fi. You can turn them off, you can change things, and you can look at the settings, which opens up the network application. Yeah, and it takes a little second. There it is. It got itself all pulled up. So you can, change your settings here and work on your how you want them set up. I actually use this because I'm using static IPs, so I needed to figure that one out pretty quick this morning. This is about you. This is where you log in, and here's where you can get to your account settings. And then down here we have settings, which takes you to the main settings menu. This is where you can lock the screen, so I've just locked my screen. This is what it looks like. And then to get it back open, just open that, or rather put your password in and you're back in. And then here's where you can select to power off or restart the machine right there. I'm not going to click that, of course. I really don't want to power anything off. So those are the really basic controls there. And then there's a little bit more to the system. So let me show you one thing first off, because if you've played around with Linux distributions, you're probably used to how this works, and it doesn't work this way in GNOME. And I don't know whether they've fixed this in the latest versions. The last time I posted about this, the developer said that they were going to work on that. But here's where we set up printers, okay? And it looks pretty straightforward. It found my printer and it set it up all right. But if you look carefully here, there is no place for you to be able to put this printer on a network and share it. And they just don't have the options here. Now there's a couple of things that you can do. Is you can start the cup server and then you can log into it with a web page, which I did the first time around. I ran into this problem. And then somebody pointed out to me that I didn't have to do that to fix that. No, what I could do is just use the old printer settings thing. So let's see if I can get this to come up. System config. Do it right, Joe. There you go. Printer. Now this brings up the more familiar application that we see today in Ubuntu with Unity and Linux Mint, this little guy right here. And then you can come in here and then you can set up your servers. So if I go to settings, there we go. My server is up and running and everything is cool. So yeah, it's kind of strange. They updated it, but they didn't put some functionality in there. So if you run into that problem, that's exactly what's happening. So if you want to change your desktop backgrounds, let's get back into settings and we'll just take a little tour through here because it is different. Let's see. We'll go to background first and see you have two choices. This is the lock screen and this is the screen in the background. So you can choose from pictures. These are the standard wallpapers that come with it and they're actually pretty cool. So we can choose that one. I kind of like that. This kind of earthy colors. And then you select and then that will change that. And let's say we want to change this here. So let's go down through here and look for something. This is the default for that, but we could choose anything we wanted, or we can look in the pictures folder. This is what's in my pictures folder. So I could have the water tower or my cats or whatever as the background image. That's fine, no big deal. So in this case, I think what I'm going to do is go back with the default. I had it set to that old. That was like the Ubuntu 8.04 default wallpaper we had up there when I started the video. So we'll do this for a little while. I think it looks it kind of goes with the Numix theme I've got running. Let's see, what other settings can we look at while we're in here? As far as like controlling the screen lock, and it's here, it's under privacy plus some other things. It is a little bit different. The power settings are a little bit different. So this is where you set this up. Like, unfortunately, the shortest amount of time that you can have this thing set to blank your monitor is 15 minutes. And then if you want the machine to automatically suspend, you can click down here and you can select a time. I've got it set for 1 hour to automatically suspend. That's a little bit different than what you might have seen in other desktops. Now this is just the basic settings. There are actually more settings, and this is where it can get really interesting. So let's go here. I'm going to type in tweak, and that will bring me up the tweak tool. Now when you first install the GNOME desktop environment, you get a non-active desktop. There are no icons here. Right-clicking doesn't do anything. You have to turn that on, and then you can choose what you want to see on your desktop. So that's pretty cool right there. And then the next thing that we'll look at is extensions. Now, this will integrate with your web browser. And this is something that I've had problems with on other distributions. On the Ubuntu GNOME distribution, no problem at all. You just click down here on Get More Plugins, and it'll open up your browser, and then you go to a special web page, and that web page will allow you to choose more and turn them on and off. It's a feature, it's a plugin that you install in Chrome or Firefox or whatever your browser is, and that's how you do that. However, it doesn't work really well on OpenSUSE. If you install Leap 42.2 or something like that, it doesn't really work that well. You have to go find some packages to install or do something. But with Ubuntu GNOME, it works right out of the box, so that's nice. And you can turn these extensions off, and there's a ton of them for the GNOME desktop. That's kind of the idea behind it, is that you'd have a bunch of extensions. And I really didn't want to close that, but I closed it anyway, so go back and get it again. Okay. I have this thing where I close things when I'm talking. Don't want them in my face. So here we go. We can change the theme. Now, I only got one theme installed here. I've got Numix installed, which is actually the package that's in the repos for Ubuntu. So if you do a search for Numix, you can get this, and makes it look a little bit different. I haven't gone hog wild with the theming, but we can take a look what it looks like with the standard theme. And of course, I do have dark theme enabled here. So this is what it looks like. Looks a little big to me. And let's see, let's open this up and we can look at the file manager and show you what that looks like. So that's what that looks like. And then I have installed Numix, and that's what it looks like with Numix. Not a huge difference, but still a little bit different looking and a little bit more flat. So there you go. Some people really like Arc. You can have that. You can change your icons if you want to, and you can change your cursor, and that's about it right here. And if you want to do more theming, you can jump in and take a look around. So what else do we have to look at? See, that's appearance. We've looked at desktop and what that will do. You can also switch on and off the universal dark theme. I like things dark, so I did that. If you don't like it, don't turn it on. We've looked at extensions. Here's where you can adjust your fonts and your aliasing. And they have a font scaler here, but if you go over like 1.2, then it assumes that you want large fonts, like you need some sort of accessibility option for low vision. And so I just set them manually to get them to look the way I wanted them to. Keyboards and mouse, more power settings in here. So yeah, you can do a lot with the tweak tool. And when GNOME 3 first came along, they had the tweak tool, but they didn't include it. You had to go get it. So if you can imagine what it was like when we had GNOME 2, which looks like what Ubuntu Mate or Ubuntu Mate looks like these days, we went to this and we were like, we didn't know anything, man. The desktop doesn't work. We're clicking around going, nothing's happening. That's what happened to us. So that's kind of a quick tour of some of the settings here, and that's what it looks like. Now, the GNOME desktop environment is not lightweight. This is probably the biggest memory sucker of all of the major desktop environments. When you boot it up, now of course this isn't an accurate thing right here because I've got a bunch of stuff running, but when you first boot this up, it's going to suck up about a gig of memory right off the bat. It's going to go slurp, and that's what it takes to run. It has a lot of stuff going on in the background, and it loads a lot of things in memory and keeps them there to keep the desktop responsive. So if you have a low resource machine, we're talking about probably 4 gigs or less, you may notice that GNOME runs really slow on your machine. Now this one right now has, I've gone back to the original memory configuration on this. I had it up to 12 for a while, but I was mixing ECC and non-ECC memory, so I went back to having all ECC. So I got about 9 gigs of memory available to this thing, and it's, you know, I don't have any problems with that. But like right now, I mean, we're sucking up 2.15 gigabytes. So let's see if I can get that down. No, don't close that. I didn't want to do that. I close things when I'm talking. It's a habit. So let's go ahead and just close the browser here and see if that doesn't knock that back a little bit. Didn't do much at all. We're up to 1.42 gigabytes being used up. So yeah, it is a bit of a memory sucker, gang. That's something about GNOME to keep in mind. Now the development on the GNOME desktop is definitely going to pick up, because basically with Ubuntu picking it up and making it their default desktop, we're talking about having 3 major distributions of Linux ship this by default or as an option. So if you install OpenSUSE, you are given a choice usually between KDE and GNOME right up front. If you install Fedora, it's pretty much GNOME as the default desktop, and that's a big distribution. And now Ubuntu is shipping with GNOME by default as well. So that's 3, and then many others have it available as well. Arch Linux for a long time was considered to be like the default was GNOME or XFCE. So this is pretty big. That means that this desktop environment is going to be getting a lot of use. It's going to get a lot of users, and it's going to get a lot of stuff downstream coming back from the developers who are implementing it, going back up to the GNOME project, and that will speed up development. So that's pretty awesome. And I think it's just going to get better and better. So we're going to see how long I stick with this. Like I said, I put it into a dual boot environment, and I will talk a little bit about how I pulled that off. Now, yes, this time I can actually go ahead and close this. So you can turn this off. There's a plugin that turns this off, but that's another thing. I was going to come up here and click on the home folder, and look what happened. I got up there and I got into activities. Just click anywhere on activities and it goes away, and it'll be all right. Or there is actually a way to turn that hot corner off. So what I wanted to show you guys was what I did here. So let me open up that, and then let's get disks, just for those of you who are curious about these sorts of things. So this is drive 1 in the machine right here, and this first partition is Linux Mint, and then I gave it like a huge swap partition in the middle. It's got 10 gigs of swap. I know it's never going to use it, but why not? I got the disk space, right? And then over here, this is Ubuntu GNOME. So we are booted off of this right now. And then as far as the home directory, folder, and files are concerned, they are on their own separate hard drive. So home is automatically mounted in Linux Mint. But in the Ubuntu GNOME installation, the home folder itself is actually part of the operating system. And then what I did was created links to all the data folders that are on that drive, Linux Mint's home drive. And there you go. That way I have access to all of the data, but any configuration files, they are different. So if I'm running a different version of something here, then I'm not going to have to worry about them intermingling. Some people have asked me in the past, can you use the same home directory for 2 different distributions of Linux? Technically, the answer is yes. You really wouldn't want to do that, because what could happen is, okay, let's say that you have LibreOffice 5.1 on one distribution, and the other distribution is at LibreOffice 5.2, and there are differences there. So when you're switching back and forth, you may run into some weirdness. So you want to keep those things separate. But of course, like data, like documents and things like that, you can share. And of course, my scripts are designed to run pretty much on anything. So there you go. Now what I did do was I went ahead and linked over, I actually copied over the binaries for Firefox, and then I put a link to it here. This is its own Firefox running here, and it's not part of the distribution. I have a video up how to do that. So this gives me a generic Firefox that doesn't have any modifications at all in it that I can use to do things with Firefox if I should so desire. And this is kind of like my fallback if I'm trying to get something to work, and I don't change the I don't add plugins to this basically, except for this little plugin up here called Title Bar Plus, which gets rid of the title bar, because that's in the GNOME desktop by default. You have this bar that's always up here, and it never goes away, and you can't do anything with it. When you open up an application, so let's open up Rhythmbox. This is where your menus appear for the application, right there. Sometimes all you'll see is quit that will show up there, because it just means it doesn't talk to it, and then the menus will be within the application. The GNOME developers use GTK, and they like to do what's known as client-side decorations. This was a bit of a controversy a while back that seems to have calmed down. So this is what a client-side decoration is. You have a menu bar, but it's not really a menu bar, and it has buttons in it. So the more traditional way is to have a menu bar up top here like this that has these standard buttons, and they don't it doesn't do much of anything else. This is what it does. But newer GTK applications have the menu and some of the controls. They are integrated in there. So that's what they're talking about. You may have noticed down here we have the little tray icon that for Simple Screen Recorder has popped up down here. They do not appear up here by default. There are plugins and extensions that allow you to change this if you want to. You can have your tray icons appear up here, but it has this little thing that if there's anything like that running, it shows up down there. Notifications show up here, so we have a couple of them. You get something new and it pops up, and then it remembers it, and then you can just click on the clock and you can look at your notifications. And I think that about covers the GNOME desktop environment. This is GNOME 3. And what is this? I think this is 3.18. I'm not really sure. Let's see what the... Let's open up Nautilus, which is the file manager, and look at the About menu. So that would be up here. Oh, this is 3.14. That's right. I'm sorry. Ubuntu 16.10 shipped with 3.18. So this is a slightly older version of the GNOME desktop. This is 3.14 that they have. Not that huge of a difference. There are some minor differences between them, but this seems to be an older version. And of course, I'm assuming that because this is a long-term support version, that any major stability thing or bug would be backported. But in general, it's 3.14. So that's what it is. So there you go, gang. Just a quick look around, just to show you what I was playing around with this morning. Thank you for watching. Check out Easy Linux on the web. Check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And check out freedompenguin.com for lots of really cool stories about Linux. And thank you for watching the video. I do appreciate it. Well, you thought we were done. We're not, actually, because I just remembered as soon as I stopped the video that I had forgot to show you guys the Gnome Software application if you haven't seen it before. This is what it looks like. This has been around for a little while now, and it comes with any distribution of Linux that you use GNOME on. What it does is it adapts itself to whatever you got going. So you'll find this same application on Fedora. You'll find it on Arch. Maybe not on OpenSUSE. I don't think it's there. It might be. I'm not really sure. I was playing around with that not too long ago, but I don't remember. It definitely works for Ubuntu, and it's pretty cool. You can just look for applications. So let's look for GRSync here, and it says that I have already installed that. Let's find something that I haven't installed, and then we can install it. So let's get BleachBit. Oop. Well, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm doing something wrong. There it is. I was mistyping it. I'm all fumble fingers when I'm making videos. I don't know why. People think I can't type. Actually, I can. I just can't type and talk and think at the same time. Okay, so let's install BleachBit, and we'll see how that works. So all I did was click on it, and it's going to ask for my password. And now it is actually installing, and I can go look for other applications while this is going on if I want to. So I can look for something else, look for games or whatever that is. So that is how you would search for applications. They also have them in groups, so you can click around. If you can just, let's see what else we got here. Well, I mean, these are featured applications. Let's look under development tools. So if we need to install any of this stuff, we're good to go. There it is. So that's pretty cool. And then you can look at just what you have installed on the computer, which is nice. So you can just scan through here and see what applications you do have installed. In case you don't need anything, you can dump it and get it off the machine. And this will also handle updates here. so you can see whether you're up to date. And right now this machine is all up to date. So there you go. I showed you software. I had forgotten to show you software. I usually mention that I'm going to show people something in a video and then I don't show it. But this time around I caught myself. I'm so happy. Yes. Have fun playing with your Linux. And check out Easy Linux on the web. Check out Easy Linux on Facebook. Check out freedompenguin.com. And I'm actually done. I mean it this time. See you later.